Today we're doing a one quarterback rookie mock draft. I saw some people asking about that. So we're doing 2 rounds. We're doing 12 picks per round. So it's a 12-team league. Like I said, one quarterback. I didn't put a tight end premium on this one. I will say this. I did something a little bit different. Nate, I'm sure you saw that when I prepped this mock for us to do. I didn't assign either of us the 101 because we knew we could assume in most cases, probably 99% of the leagues out there, it's going to be Ashton Genty at the 101 running back from Boise State. Do you see, especially in one quarterback league, anybody else going ahead of Ashton Genty?
I can see it. I think majority of the time it's going to be Ashton Genty. I think there might be some Marion Hampton truthers out there, depending on the landing spot. Like if the landing spot is that much better, which I can't imagine a landing spot that really puts him over Genty, who we're looking at basically the Bears and the Raiders right now with Ashton Genty. So we'll see what happens. I think he's going to be the 101 90% of the time. And Mike, I actually thought that you were just giving him to me,
No,
without
sir.
having me select him. I just
I'm
thought you were
making
like,
you
oh,
work.
you can have Nate. And I
Nope.
was like, oh, thank you very much. But
Nope.
I guess I don't get him. No one gets him.
No. I made us work for this one, Nate. There's no easy layups here. There's none of that. Sorry. But yeah, Ashton Genty, he's the guy. And then I went ahead. I took the 102 because I wanted to take a running back, and I took Omarion Hampton, running back from North Carolina. Nate, I'm the Omarion Hampton truther. That does not mean that I would be taking him over Ashton Genty if I had the 101. This is a guy, he could do everything. He's physical, great vision between the tackles. It's a good ball catcher as well. Got some good wiggle on him and pretty good top end speed for a guy his size as well. I also love his vision. So I'm going with Omarion Hampton with the 102. 2 running backs off the board. Gotta love it.
Yeah, I mean, Marion Hampton, you can't go wrong there with the 102. I know he is your RB2, Mike.
Yep.
But at the third pick here, I'm picking up my RB2, which
Ooh,
is Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. That's who I currently have. I think consensus does have Hampton as the RB2, and I do like him. He's my RB3, but I really like Henderson. I think he also has a chance to possibly go in the first round, more likely in the second round, and he could find himself a pretty nice landing spot. Saw Field Yates just did his mock draft, and I believe he had the Cowboys picking up Trey Henderson in the second round. Would be a great landing spot for him. Henderson has great explosiveness, great upside in both the rushing game and the receiving game. I really like what he brings to the table out of the backfield in that multifaceted kind of threat. And I think that really fits really well for fantasy football. Now, he might not get as many touches per game as a guy like Hampton, who's a bit more stout. But, high efficiency touches like those receiving backs, he's going to get that. He's also going to be able to handle enough. He ran for 1,016 yards last year as a true freshman in the Big Ten. He ran for 1,248 yards and 15 touchdowns. So this is a guy who can get it done on the ground, through the air. I'm excited to pick him up here at the 103. I think in a one quarterback league, I'm very happy to have any of these top 3 running backs.
And NFL mock draft database does have him going in the second round. So good call on that one. Nate, I actually wanted to bring up and see where Omarion Hampton is projected to go right now. And again, NFL mock draft database, not the be all end all. Omarion Hampton right now projected to be a first round pick.
Yep. And the latest mock draft I looked at, Field Yates, he released one this morning. He had a Hampton going to the Broncos, which I've seen multiple times.
Be a good spot for him. I just saw on mock draft database here, Travion Henderson going to the Broncos. That seems to be a juicy landing spot. I don't like the Cowboys. They have Javonte Williams. They have Miles Sanders. They're all in. They're good to go. So I don't see that happening. But hey, you never know. Strange things have happened. So let's move along to the 104. I went ahead and took my new wide receiver one, and that is Luther Burden, wide receiver from Missouri. Now, I said before previously what I liked more about Ted McMillan over Luther Burden is I feel Luther Burden need to be schemed open, but the more I watch on him, the more I just kind of dive into him a little bit. We know he could play inside, which he predominantly did his last year, but let's not forget earlier in his career at Missouri, he did play outside it well. So he can play inside, outside. He's physical enough, and he is just explosive after the catch. And what better place to have yourself be schemed open than the NFL? There's really no better place. He goes to a good spot with a good coordinator. They're going to get him open. They're going to get the ball in his hands. I'm going Luther Burden at the 104. and I don't feel bad about it.
Mike, I love to hear that. I was very surprised to see you pick him up over Tet. I remember, like 2 months ago when we did our wide receiver rankings, you had Tet as your one. I had Luther
Did
Burden as my one. I told you to go back and watch the 2023 film. Sounds like you probably did
a little bit.
because, the 2024 film, I get it. The Missouri offense was not very good despite bringing back many of their starters on offense, including their quarterback and Burden, of course. But that 2023 film, that's what I love to see out of Luther Burden. I think that the kind of anti-hype on Luther Burden right now is a bit much. Seeing him slide out of the first round in some mock drafts, people, having him outside the top three, sometimes even maybe at wide receiver 5 or 6 in some of these occasions. NFL's talking down on him. We're hearing about off the field issues. Like we've never had a successful wide receiver in the NFL with off the field issues before.
Yeah,
So they're not known for that. They're known for being, golden boys, church choir boys. So
yeah.
I'm not worried about it. I think it's a bunch of smoke. Yeah, Luther Burden is an extremely explosive player, game changer kind of guy, and he's been that everywhere he's been. So I think it's going to continue in the NFL. Don't buy this poo-pooing on Luther Burden. He's great.
Currently a projected second round pick.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Draft database.
I don't think that's going to happen, Mike, to be honest. You're going to tell me that 32 teams are going to look at Luther Burden's skill set and say, nah, I don't want that guy in the first round. I don't
They'd
think
have
so.
to be stacked at wide receiver, and
There's
not
too
a
many
lot of
people that
teams.
need wide receivers.
Yeah. Hey, you can make room for a guy like Luther Burden
Yeah, you
on
can.
your team. Hey, let's kick it over to the 105.
All right, the 105. You picked up Luther Burden, so I had to go ahead and pick up Ted McMillan. I'm certainly not upset about having to make this consolation pick with Tet. This is a guy that's caught over 2,700 receiving yards over the past 2 years. He's been really, really effective for Arizona coming in. At 6'5". This is a big guy, big target. Gets down the field, has that X roll, and can play it really well. He's one of the better guys at making those plays down the field. He's also surprisingly better than you expect after the catch. He's not overly elusive, not anything that's going to really pop off the film, but he still happens to get those extra yards after the catch, make it happen, shrug off a tackle here and there. And I would say he's above average after the catch, not incredible or anything, but better than you expect for someone his size and his play style. So this is a guy that we've been looking forward to for a couple of years now, Ted McMillan. He had 702 yards his freshman season with Arizona and 8 touchdowns. So this is a guy that's been productive over his 3 years. Like I said, we've been watching him for a while, excited about him coming out. He's coming out now. I don't really have him ranked over the top 3 guys last year, but I still think he is very good on his own. Can be a low-level wide receiver 1 at the next level or a really, really high-level wide receiver 2.
Yeah, currently a projected first-round pick on NFL Mock Draft Database here. So let's kick it over to the 106. I'm going with your running back two's backfield mate, and that is Quinshon Judkins, running back from Ohio State. Not as a dynamic of a playmaker as Travion Henderson. I don't think he's as good in space, but definitely more physical. I think he's a little bit more durable than Travion Henderson. And look, Travion Henderson, where he really excels is as a pass catcher, but Quinshon Judkins is no slouch there either. Great vision, another really physical guy like Omarion Hampton, kind of the running back that I like to see if I was building an NFL roster. Omarion Hampton, Quinshon Judkins, these are running backs that I would personally be going for. A guy that could just really grind a defense down. I don't know. You get to a point where with the way running backs are, maybe these guys don't ever get the backfield all to themselves, but we've seen it work in committees before. So Quinshon Judkins for me at the 106. Nate, do you have anything to add about him before we move on to your pick at the 107?
No, not too much to add on Judkins. Like him, he's been productive his entire career as well. I think, we had some questions about his explosiveness. He ended up running pretty well at the combine, so I think he answered some of those questions. So I'm more than happy with picking him up here. I think there's also been some anti-hype. I don't know I need a better word than anti-hype. I don't know, Mike, if you got one, but
Come on. I don't. He's currently a projected second round draft pick.
Yeah, I like that. I like an early day 2 pick with Quinshon.
All right. Nate, you kind of shocked me with your 107 picks. Why don't you tell us who it is?
All right, I'm really excited about this player. The hype has kind of grown both on NFL draft Twitter and things like that, as well as just kind of keeping up with the mock drafts and watching some more film myself. I'm getting more and more excited about Matthew Golden. So I picked up Matthew Golden here at the 107. Coming up as my wide receiver 3. He's the wide receiver 3 off the board here in this mock draft. And coming in at 5'11", 191 pounds. I'm not worried about the size at all. That's a good average size in the NFL. So he checks a lot of those boxes. But when you look at the fact that he ran a 4.29, that is game-changing speed at a
Yeah.
1.49 10-yard split. Anything under 1.5 is honestly crazy. I know we're talking like 0.01 of a second, but still very, very impressive for this guy to be this fast and also have the route running ability that he has, the body control along the sideline, and the knack for making big plays. He did it while he was at Houston. He did it at Texas at the end of the year in some really big matchups, both in the SEC as well as in the college playoffs. So Matthew Golden, someone who's really grown on me. Sounds like there's a lot of hype in the NFL media about him. Sounds like some teams might even have him as their wide receiver 1, Mike. So, when I see something that looks exciting and the NFL is telling me that they like it as well, I'm paying attention. Matthew Golden for me, 107 here. And I think you're going to get a really good player who has a lot of upside in this draft. He might not have the physical upside from a frame way, that Luther Burden with his stocky build or Ted McMillan with his height. But Matthew Golden athletically is very, very impressive. And I think, could be a really good wide receiver at the next level. Kind of in like a really good wide receiver too. I don't want to comp him Devonta Smith, but I think fantasy wise we could see him maybe do something like that.
Yeah, I like the pick. I don't know. I thought you'd be going elsewhere, but that's okay. He is currently a projected first round pick, and consensus is 22nd to the Chargers, which would be a nice spot for him, even though they did just sign Mike Williams. But I'd love to see him paired up with Quentin Johnston and Lab McConkey, and of course Jalen Reagor. Can't forget about him as well. So, hey, it wouldn't really be a mock draft without me taking the first tight end off the board. I'm taking my tight end 1 at the 108, and that's Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State, extremely athletic. He's extremely versatile, and man, did he pile up some yards at Penn State. Now, that being said, I don't think his production would have been as good had Penn State had some sort of credible wide receiver room. Just couldn't seem to put it together there, but that's neither here nor there. Tyler Warren, he's a guy where if given a good landing spot, I think he could step in, maybe not be as good as Brock Bowers, but I think he could be a good tight end 2 on your roster for you right off the rip. So Tyler Warren going at the 108 for me, and I did not bring up where he is projected to go yet on NFL mock draft database. Let's see. Where do you think? You think he's a first round pick here?
Yeah, he's a top 15 pick.
They're projecting him first round, 10th consensus is 10th overall to the Bears. Goodbye, Cole Kmet. That's the case.
I don't know about going to the Bears, but
that's what it says.
To the Broncos, to the Colts. One time I saw him go to the Cowboys, so Jake Ferguson's job. Who knows about that? But Tyler Warren. There's not many more tight ends that are more versatile than him. He had over 200 yards of rushing just this past year, so very impressive.
Pretty crazy. Hey, let's kick it over to the 109.
All right, the 109. I know I said Matthew Golden's my wide receiver 3, but this guy is a very close tie for the wide receiver 3 position. Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. Lance Zierlein, the lead writer for the NFL Draft Combine on NFL.com, compared him to JSN, former teammate JSN. And I like that as well. This is a guy that is definitely going to be playing at the slot, the next level. I do think he offers some versatility to be able to play outside as well as that flanker position. Comes in at 6'1", 202, so he's not a small guy that needs the slot, but his play style, his route running ability, and his yards after the catch are really strong, and that it really helps him create mismatches in the slot and take advantage of those. So this is a guy that has caught a lot of passes over his time at Ohio State, coming up with 81 last year for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. So this is a guy that is going to be reliable. Quarterbacks are going to love him. He's a pro's pro. Egbuka is a really safe pick, and I think still offers upside, especially in fantasy football. We'll see if he's a first rounder. I definitely think he's a first rounder, probably in that 20 range. We've seen a lot of wide receivers drafted in the past. But I've seen some mock drafts from falling into early second round. But I think with how we're looking at these wide receivers getting paid now, I think someone's going to want that fifth-year option on Egbuka.
Yeah. Projected second round pick on NFL mock draft database. So I could see it happening. I like Egbuka as well. Nate, this may catch some heat, but you know what? Look, I understand it's a one quarterback league. Still got to fill that quarterback position.
Yep.
And sometimes when I think they are the best player on the board, I'm going to go ahead and
Mhm.
take them. I've taken quarterbacks in the first round of one quarterback league before. Take my quarterback one, forgive me. That is Cam Ward from Incarnate Ward, Washington State, and Miami. He's been around. Look, I think he's going to be better if he sits a year. And I think a lot of these quarterbacks coming in should sit a year. There's obviously exceptions. We've seen guys like Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams come in and play well. But I think we could probably safely say most of the guys in this class, quarterback wise anyway, should be sitting a year. Cam Ward does a lot of things well. He's really cool in the pocket. He's got a good arm. For the most part, he puts the ball where it needs to be and leads his receivers well. I think he can be a better runner than what he lets himself be, but he does try to always make the play with his arm first, although sometimes he does tend to hang on to the ball too long. But all the flaws that he has, they're definitely coachable. So, Cam Ward for me at the 110, you may not like it, but I'm going to just go ahead and plant my flag on my quarterback one of this draft. All right, I took Cam Ward at the 110. Nate, the 111 is all you. I actually predicted this one here, to be honest with you. I know it'd be a little bit later if it was a super flex draft.
Yep.
Go ahead. Tell us who you got.
Yeah, I don't know how much later in the Superflex draft. I do know that if you're not drafting with me, you'll probably find this guy a little bit later in your draft than you're going to find it in your draft with me. But I've had to pick up Devin Neal here at the 111. I couldn't let him get into the second round. I couldn't let Mike take him before I got a chance. I know I'm picking him up over some other running backs that many people have ranked over Devin Neal, but I love Devin Neal. I was talking in the Discord with some of our Patreons in there about how much I love him just because he is one of the most productive running backs in this draft class. A guy that, for the last 3 seasons has had over 1,000 yards, over 1,200 the last 2 seasons. His freshman season had 700 yards. This is a guy that has 32 touchdowns over the last 2 years to go along with 49 receptions and almost 500 yards on through the air. So this is a guy that's been extremely productive for a Kansas team that has relied upon him for their offense, and he continues to show off what he can do on the film, continue to show off that production. Goes to the NFL Combine. He runs a 4.58. People are worried about that. There's a lot of really good running backs who have run 4.58s or worse. I've seen some of those 40 times for Le'Veon Bell. Some of these other guys 4.6s is what they're running, and they looked just fine when they got to the NFL. He's still explosive with a 37.5-inch vertical jump. So it's not that he's not fast. I don't think his long speed necessarily is, the best long speed. I don't think he's necessarily the quickest guy, but he has great vision, great patience, really understands the flow of the game, really trusts his blockers. And I think he's a guy that's going to go into the NFL, hopefully be a day 2 pick. I think he's a third rounder in my opinion. But if he goes to a team where he's going to get touches, doesn't need to be the starter necessarily, can be one of the guys in a committee. I think this is a guy that can have a lot of production in the NFL, be very effective, be very efficient, and could get a lot of fans once you see him on the field. So this is a guy I think you got to look past the measurables, look past the numbers, look at the statistics though. And look at that film, and you see that Devin Neal is honestly one of the better running backs in this draft class, which is loaded. I have Devin Neal with my top 5, and I'm not ashamed at all for that. I have him over your next pick, Mike. If you want to say anything about Devin Neal, otherwise you can talk about your next pick.
I want to say that he is a projected 5th round draft.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. It does have the Chiefs on here twice as a landing spot for him, and I think that would be a really good spot for him. And if he goes to the Chiefs, even if it's in the mid rounds, he's definitely going to get a bump. Teams like that, offensive player goes, you always get a bump. Chiefs, Bills, Eagles, Ravens, teams like that, they always seem to get a bump when an offensive player goes there, unless it's a wide receiver going to the Ravens. People just love to hate.
Yeah, I don't think the Ravens necessarily get that bump, but
no. Let's close out the first round with my last pick here, and that is Caleb Johnson, running back from Iowa. Is he the most special or gifted player that you're going to see in this draft? No. Is he productive and extremely physical? Absolutely. Hey, yet again, I'm showing the type of running back I like and I would build a team around. Look, I love Caleb Johnson. I would love to see him get his pad level a little bit lower. Again, that is something that is completely coachable at the next level. Physical, great vision, and you know what? For a team that doesn't score a lot of points, he gets a pretty good amount of touchdowns and he catches the ball really well too out of the backfield. Iowa, they don't throw to the running back a ton, but when he does it, he looks really smooth and he looks pretty explosive after the catch too. So for me, Caleb Johnson at the 112 kind of felt like a no-brainer. And look, to be honest with you, I would take Caleb Johnson over Devin Neal. Let's see where he's projected to go.
You and a lot of people, Mike. That's okay.
Do you have a
That's okay.
prediction here for where you think?
Third round, but I think people are high on him, probably second round.
Second round, yeah. He's a
Yeah.
projected second
I
round
think
pick right now.
I have Caleb as a third round pick. I'm not hating on Caleb. I don't think he's a day 3 pick or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I love me some Devin Neal. I think Caleb Johnson's a little bit more of a straight line runner, which depending on the scheme, you put him in a gap scheme, you let him just run head down, strong guy. He's pretty fast as well, big guy, can work really well. But without knowing where he's going to end up, I like Devin Neal a bit more versatile, bit better looking film, maybe in my opinion. But
okay, yeah. Hey, to each their own. Nate, are you ready to kick off the second round?
I sure am.
What do you got for me at the 201?
All right, one name might have been missing from the first round, depending on your thoughts on this player. But I definitely wanted to make sure I picked him up here in the second round. We definitely did not forget about him. Travis Hunter, wide receiver / quarterback out of Colorado. I don't know what Travis Hunter looks like snap-wise at the next level. I have no idea, and I've tried to do my best to keep up with it. And I've heard both ways. I've heard some people say, yeah, this guy should be a full-time wide receiver. Look at how good he is. Some other people say he should be a full-time quarterback with 15 snaps at the wide receiver position. Seems like there's a bit of a lean that way, but not necessarily from Travis Hunter himself, just from kind of the NFL media. So I don't know what's going to happen. We won't even know what happens after the draft, probably. I mean, maybe we'll kind of have an idea based on the landing spot, but I mean, it is most likely to go to the Browns or the Jaguars right now. So it could be either or. But Travis Hunter as a wide receiver, if he was a full-time wide receiver, Mike, he would be my wide receiver 1 in this class.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think he's that good. I think he's that good of an athlete. I think he's that good with the ball in the air. I think he's that good at the catch point. I really like Travis Hunter, but not knowing the fact that he's going to be a full-time wide receiver, it does drop him down the board for me. And I do think that there's going to be a lean to him being a cornerback first with some wide receiver snaps. I think it's a little bit easier to do that than have him be a wide receiver with some cornerback snaps. Because, you're not going to necessarily change your defense, every couple of plays. That's not really good for the defense. But you can throw a couple, Travis Hunter plays in there and things like that. So that being said, if Travis Hunter's looking at 15 snaps, 20 snaps a game, he can still be fantasy productive because when he's going to go in there, he's probably going to have a pretty high target rate, I would imagine. So I can still see Travis Hunter being productive for our fantasy teams, but on a week in, week out basis, I'm not sure if we're actually going to get that if he is playing cornerback. So that does drop him out of the first round for me. I do think he's a really, really good wide receiver, though. So I'm not going to let him drop too much farther. So as we learn more, our valuation on Travis Hunter will change, but I do really think that this guy is one of the better wide receivers in this draft class, if not the best. 96 receptions last year, 1,258 yards, 15 touchdowns, top 5 in every category, won the Blitnikoff Award. Mike, I know that should have gone to Nick Nash in your opinion. I'm not going to share my opinion. I'm not really sure who it should have gone to. I don't know if it should have gone to Travis Hunter, but still, either way, even if it shouldn't have gone to him, he was right up there anyway. So this is a guy that's a really good wide receiver, and I think deserves a spot here at the top of the second round.
Currently projected to be a first-round pick. We all knew that. And the consensus, just so you know, I'm not giving consensuses for guys outside of the first round because NFL Mock Draft Database does not do that. It's first round only. Consensus is third overall to the Giants.
To the Giants.
To the Giants. So his career over before it started. R.I.P. Travis Hunter. Nate, I'm going to go 202. Sticking to my guns. Mason Taylor, tight end from LSU. I love this guy. One thing I've noticed a lot about this tight end class in particular, from everything I've watched so far, all the guys that I've watched, they're all very good on tight end screens. And I think tight end screens should be a thing. As an Eagles fan, I saw Dallas Goedert run a lot of tight end screens. It's effective. You get some blocking for these guys. They're big, they're physical, they're athletic. They can make things happen with the ball in their hands. Mason Taylor is one of those guys. I am a big Mason Taylor fan. I'm not afraid to admit it. So he was my pick there at the 202. And while I'm bringing him up on NFL Mock Draft Database, of course, an ad pops up for a camera, which I now want to buy. A projected second round pick in this year's draft.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think I got him at tight end 3. I'm going to be talking about my tight end 2 in just a minute.
Nate, you want to kick it over to the 203?
I do. This is where I'm picking up my tight end too in this class, and that's Colson Loveland out of Michigan. Colson Loveland, he's been projected to the Chargers. We love that Michigan man connection there with him and Jim Harbaugh. I think that'd be a great spot for him. But I've also seen him projected a couple other places. But either way, he is looking like a first rounder. I
Yeah.
have said it before. While Tyler Warren is extremely versatile and really opens up a lot of options for an offense, I do think Colson Loveland is the best receiving tight end in this class, just as a pure receiver.
You take that back.
I will not take that back, Mike. I think he's a better route runner. I think he's just more smooth athletically. Tyler Warren is more physical for sure. I think that's what really sets him apart. But Colson Loveland, I think, is going to be a really good big slot for some teams. Someone that's going to really be able to be a focus of a passing game, can be a top 2 target on a offense. And that's what we always strive for with tight ends that we want to grab in fantasy football is we want to grab guys that are top 2 targets. That's where you get that volume. That's where you get those opportunities for touchdowns, things like that. That's the kind of guys that we're going after in fantasy football. And Colson Loveland, I think, fits the bill for that really, really well. I love what he's done at Michigan last year. Was not so great, but that's because that offense was anemic. 56 receptions, 582 yards, still pretty good considering what they were working with their quarterback. But in 2023 with J.J. McCarthy, we saw him go off for 649 yards. So, we've seen what this guy can do. I think he's going to be a good pick at the next level, first rounder, and someone that I'm pretty happy to pick up at this point. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised to see him at the end of the first round, but I like him really here at the 203.
Well, you will not see him at the end of the first round in the NFL draft. He's a projected first rounder. Consensus is 14th overall to the Indianapolis Colts. But Nate, I like my tight ends a little more versatile. Colson Loveland only has 1 career carry for -2 yards. Tyler Warren, 30 carries for 225 yards and 6 touchdowns in his career. So just throw it out there for you. That's why I am doing that. So let's go to the 204. And I feel like I'm a little bit higher on this guy than you. I've talked about him before. That is Trey Harris, wide receiver from Ole Miss. Now, you're going to see some things on the tape that I think will probably turn some people off. And I don't think it's his fault. Hear me out. The Ole Miss system played him too close to the line. And Ole Miss is a system that works really well for Ole Miss, but we've seen their quarterbacks struggle a little bit to adjust to the NFL. I think Jackson Dart is a guy who's going to have some growing pains, mostly because they never take snaps under center. And that's not good in the NFL. You got to know how to do that. But that being said, that's not a Trey Harris issue. I think they played him too close to the line. That's just not his game. Multiple times in a game, they're running these little bubble screens or they just got him right up against the line. That's not him. Put him on slants in the middle field, have him running down the field. I'm not saying he's like DK Metcalf, but obviously he played in the same system. DK Metcalf did at the same school, doing a little helmet scouting there. There you go. He is definitely more versatile as far as what he could do route tree wise than I think what Ole Miss was having him do. He's a big body. He could be outside. He's extremely physical, both, going for the ball and after he catches the ball. I like Trey Harris a lot. And Nate, like I said, I'm pretty sure I'm higher on him than you are.
You are.
That's fine.
And actually, I was looking at Field Yates's mock draft this morning. Trey Harris did not make the first 2 rounds.
Well, he is a projected second round pick on NFLmockdraftdatabase.com. Some landing spots here. Commanders, the Broncos, the Bills, Chargers, Texans. Yeah, all interesting spots for him.
Yeah.
So, hate away, Nate. I love Trey Harris.
All right, we'll see. We'll all know in 6, 7, 8 months. Who knows? We'll get a good glimpse at least.
We'll know in 3 weeks exactly how the NFL feels about Trey Harris. Our podcast after that will be a mock draft, and obviously we will adjust accordingly. So, Nate, let's go over to the 205.
All right. I have this guy listed as Cam Scatterbo, but maybe I should say Cameron Scatterbo. Running back out of Arizona State, ran for 711 yards this past year with 21 touchdowns. Also, caught 45 balls for 605 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, quite the versatile player. Can do it through the air, can do it through the ground. I believe players with 1,500 plus rushing yards and 500 plus receiving yards is a pretty limited group. And that includes CMC. So Cam Scadable's got some good company there with his production this past year at Arizona State. Really like what he did against Texas in the playoffs. Really put that team on his back. They lost very close game late, and Scadabo, ran for 143 yards in that game. Also caught 8 catches for 99 yards. So really was a true playmaker for almost 250 total yards against Texas, which we know has a really good defense. So I love seeing what he could do against those top teams. We saw it. Now, athletically, there's going to be some questions. He didn't run at the NFL draft combine because he was injured. He did run his pro day. I believe it was like a 4.65, somewhere around there. It was a 4.6, which going back to the Devin Neal conversation, I'm not too worried about the 4.6 with his physicality and his vision and his versatility, to be quite honest. He has a lot of different tools in his bag, so the athleticism, does not need to be elite for him to be able to still be productive. And just because he's not super quick does not mean he's not athletic. He had 39.5-inch vertical, so he's still explosive. This is a guy that I still think has enough athleticism to make it in the NFL. Obviously, I didn't have him in the first round pick. So, there's been some people that have him in their top 5. I don't have him there, but I have him pretty close to it, to be honest. And I love what he brings with his physicality. We don't like to say it very often, but this guy definitely has that dog in him. He plays the game with an edge. You should have like a little sound drop you do after I do that,
What are you kidding me?
There
You
you
can
go.
have that one.
We can have that one for right now. So, but Scadabo, he does play with that edge, and I like to see that, especially with, bringing that physicality, bringing that punishment to defenders. He does that really well. And this is a guy that, picking him at the 205, I think, he's a day 2 pick. Maybe the athleticism scares somebody and he drops into the 4th round, but I'm happy to pick him here at the 205 and see what he can do with some team. If we had him with the Ravens, I'd be pretty happy.
All right, so let's go to my next pick, which is the 206. I'm going with Isaiah Bond, wide receiver from Texas, who currently is a projected 3rd-round pick. NFL Mock Draft Database.com, some projected spots. The Rams, the Commanders, and the Eagles, I do not see that happening. I think they load up on defense. The Eagles do get a little younger along the lines. That being said, look, some people are kind of all over the place on Isaiah Bond. One thing I like about him, I thought his route running was pretty good. I think he can be more physical. He is 5'11", 180. So I don't know how physical a guy like that can be, but pretty good separator, which is great. Find some gaps in the defensive zone there. Does have a little bit of inconsistent yak, but can line up kind of all over the place too. So fights as hard as he can, not quite hard enough. Gonna need to hit the NFL weight room. But I got Isaiah Bond there at the 206. Nate, you could touch on that. You can go right over to the 207.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Isaiah Bond fan myself. I think great deep threat at the next level. I'm not sure how much after that. We'll see. Mike, we do have one guy that I think some people might have expected to come off the board at this point, especially with you picking Cam Ward at the 110.
Mm-hmm.
But Shador Sanders still on the board. I'm going to pick him up here at the 207. It's a 1 quarterback mock, so obviously these guys are falling a bit more than they do in Superflex. But
Of course.
I think by the mid-second, I am more than happy to pick up Shador Sanders. I would have looked at him probably in the early second as well. But it's going to kind of come down to where he gets drafted. We've seen everything from him being, a top 3, top 5 draft pick. And we've also seen mock drafts where he slides down into the 20s. I think, a couple of weeks ago, there were some people that were putting him at the early second, which I think is a bit ridiculous. Shador Sanders is certainly talented enough to be a first-round pick. And with quarterbacks, you're going to want that 5th-year option. So I don't think there's any chance really he falls into the 5th round. If Kenny Pickett was drafted in the 1st round, Shador Sanders absolutely is going to be picked in the 1st round.
For sure.
So, if you get a 1st-round quarterback, I don't know where he goes, if it's to the Steelers, if it's to the Giants, if it's to the Browns. There's a couple different quarterback needy teams out there. But I think Shador Sanders, while he's not necessarily going to elevate an offense the way that we've seen, guys like Mahomes, Allen, the top of the class really do. Sanders can be a really good point guard kind of for a team. And I think if he's surrounded by some good weapons, he can be very productive and he can win a lot of games for an NFL team. So it's going to kind of come down to the landing spot on how I really feel about Shador Sanders, but I do like him. I did actually have him as my quarterback one when we did our quarterback rankings a while ago. I kind of have him in Ward 1A and 1B off my film score, but I understand the upside that Cam Ward brings and why the NFL likes him a bit more. I totally get it. But I think Shador Sanders offers a really, really good floor at the quarterback position.
Yeah. A 207 and a one quarterback. I like that. Currently a first round pick on NFL mock draft database. For whatever reason, they don't have a consensus on here for
Mhm.
him. But when you're scrolling down, I'm mostly seeing the Cleveland Browns. So I'm going to just take the Browns as the consensus. And I think that would be a really good spot for him. Right now, Deshaun Watson and Kenny Pickett are the two quarterbacks that are currently rostered. Yeah. So I think it would be a good spot for him. I don't know if Watson's going to play this year. Probably not, I would assume. Yeah, because he re-injured his Achilles, right?
Yeah, he's out again.
Yeah, you can let Kenny Pickett go in and do Kenny Pickett things for whatever. Let Shedeur Sanders sit for a little bit. Definitely going to need some help in the wide receiver department, though. You got Jerry Jeudy, you got David Njoku at tight end, and then a lot of big question marks after that. David Bell still kicking around, by the way. So Shedeur Sanders for you at the 207. I do like that spot for him. I wish he would just let it go a little bit sooner. I think he, like Cam Ward, holds on to the ball too
Yeah.
long at times. Let's go to the 208. And I have DJ Giddens from Kansas State. Yet again, you could see my prototype running back. I don't know why. I thought he was a smaller running back than what he is,
Big boy.
but this is a pretty big dude. And I liked his lateral agility for his size. Even though he's more of a one-cut guy, he does have some moves to kind of get around defenders. Pretty slippery at times, but can also knock you over. And another running back in this class who's very versatile. He's a very good receiving back as well. And at the 208, who knows? That could even come up a little bit.
All right, at the 209, I'm surprised you haven't picked this guy up. People might be surprised he's not off the board yet. I had him as my wide receiver 5 a while back when we did our wide receiver rankings because I was excited to talk about him. It's Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. Iowa State's bringing out some really good wide receivers this year. Jaden Higgins coming in at 6'4", 215. You see a big guy like that, and then he runs a 4.47, has a 39-inch vertical jump. I love to see the athleticism mixed with the size. You love to see that. And then you look and you see, hey, 87 catches, almost 1,200 yards last year, 9 touchdowns, had almost 1,000 yards the year before that, playing for Iowa State with another guy who's probably going to be a day 2 wide receiver. I love what Jaden Higgins can do as an outside receiver. Also, as a big slot receiver, I think he can definitely play as an X at the next level, but he could also be a big slot. I think he has some versatility between those two positions. And, him at the catch point, a good route runner that he is, though, there are some conversations being had about maybe he ran a couple specific routes very, very often and not many others. So that's going to be maybe a little bit of development at the next level. I don't know if Jaden Higgins is going to be the guy that comes in and makes a huge impact right away, but I think he's a guy that could, make some noise a little bit and then develop over the first 2 or 3 years of his career, become a player that we're all going to be really excited about. So I think this is a really good spot for him. Here at the 209, you don't put too much into that investment and expect something right away, but you get a player that I think is going to develop into a pretty solid wide receiver at the next level and probably be a pretty good flex play for years to come.
All right, I like that. And he is currently a projected second-round pick on NFL mock draft database.com. So at the 210, I have a guy that we talked about him on our Patreon. Again, you can come in there, get a week for free. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. We're going to be recording 2 pods after this. They're pretty quick. I don't want to say quick, but they're definitely not as long as our main pod. And that is Alec Aomanor, who's a pretty big wide receiver. And this is another guy, I think you could kind of talk about him like Tet McMillan light. Right?
Sure. Yeah. I
Big
don't mind that.
frame, finds gaps in the defense, pretty explosive a lot of times after the catch as well. I love this guy, man. And if you want to see some great Alec Aomanor film, check out his game against Colorado, which, if memory serves me correctly, was Stanford's biggest comeback ever. Please feel free to comment if I'm correct on
It
that.
was,
I believe so. And I also believe that game ended at like 2 a.m. Eastern time. It was
I remember that game. I stayed up. I didn't actually watch that game. I was watching something else. I can't remember what it was. But I remember seeing that on Twitter as it happened and then switching over to see the aftermath as they won that game. That was wild.
Yeah, but he is currently a projected second-round pick on NFL mock draft database.com. Couple spots for him: the Lions, the Bills, the Patriots. Patriots could use some help there. Why do they keep mocking the Eagles taking wide receivers? They're probably not going to do that. Definitely not in the second round, for sure. So, Nate, do you want to make your last pick for us? Thought you sniped me, but I actually was going to go in a different direction anyway.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, real quick, one thing on Air Mayor.
Go for it.
Watching his film. Now, this is a nasty comp that is going. I don't want anyone to put these kind of expectations on Air Manor.
No, you
But
heard it here first.
it reminds me a little bit of Michael Thomas,
Okay.
not the Cincinnati Bengals, Michael Thomas. The New Orleans Saints, Michael Thomas of
Yes.
like 2019. The way that as a big guy that he can run a slant route and win those routes that are close to the line of scrimmage, that was very impressive by him. So I'm not the only one to have a little bit of an idea that he has a little bit of Michael Thomas to his game. We'll see how much that really translates to the next level. But there are definitely some teams that are excited about Air Manor. And I think as a guy that we could continue to see kind of have his stock boost as we get closer to the draft. And especially after the draft, if he comes in, in the second round and people are really starting to hear his name and see, his size and speed and his film. So good pick here, Mike. The 211, last pick I have here in tonight's mock draft. I went with Bayshall Tootin out of Virginia Tech. Mike, I first heard of this guy thanks to you. So congrats to you. Flowers to you for finding this guy. Coming in at 5'9", 206. A little smaller, but he's got good size to him at 206. We're fine with that. But what really makes Tootin special is the fact that he ran a 4.32 40-yard dash. He has that 1.49 10-yard split like Matthew Golden had. Jumped over 40 inches in the vertical, almost 11 feet in the broad jump. I mean, this guy athletically was extremely impressive at the combine. You throw in the fact that he ran for over 100,000 yards last year, 15 touchdowns. You watch the film, you see the explosiveness, you see the versatility that he brings. He's had over 20 catches the last 3 years playing for Virginia Tech. So this is a guy that brings some versatility. I don't know if he's a day 2 pick. The athleticism certainly could help him get into day 3. The third round. But I think he's more of an early day 3 pick with some upside. Love to see what this guy could do in a committee. I think he could have some really high value touches. You get to the end of the second round, you kind of start finding guys that are your flavor, especially in a 1 quarterback draft. So, at this point, Mike, I was trying to snipe you a little bit. The guy that you picked here, maybe I should have picked, looking back in hindsight over Tootin, but I'm excited for you to talk about him. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Bayshall Tootin, a projected 4th round draft pick. And like you said, part of a committee, I think that's what he's going to have to be. Now, that being said, if he's the 1B in a committee, he has to step in for a game. I think he'd be a really solid flex play for you. Probably not going to get you like 20 points, but he'll get a few receptions. He'll get a decent amount of rushing yards for you. But I'm closing this draft off with Jalen Knoll, wide receiver from Ohio State. Nate, you touched on it before. Ohio State's putting out some awesome wide receiver prospects. Jalen Knoll, he's one of them. Now, he's a little bit smaller than his teammate, but he is everything that we were kind of hoping Xavier Restrepo is going to be at the next level. Jalen Knoll is going to be that guy. And this isn't a huge knock on Xavier Restrepo. Restrepo's a little bit smaller, but he's very physical. Jalen Knoll is a physical guy, but he also gets open and he is blazing fast when he has the ball in his hands. He's currently a projected 3rd round pick on NFL mock draft database, and I think that would be a really good spot for him. Probably going to be a slot in the NFL. Mocked right now to the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Texans, the Seahawks. The Seahawks would be an interesting fit for him.
Yeah, a lot of slot receivers already.
Yeah,
with Cup and JSN. I think Knoll goes in the 2nd round, to be quite honest.
I could see it happening. With how explosive he is after the catch, I could definitely see it happening.
And the film looks good. And then the athleticism on top of it, very impressive.
Rounding off the 2nd round, I want to say thank you to everybody who listens and watches this podcast. Really excited about the draft coming up in a few weeks. So if you are off at any point, maybe you took off for the draft, you want to have some time on the couch with some cold beverages, pour one out for me. But we'll be doing some live streams in the morning every day after that round. So we'll be doing one Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning. Check it out. And hey, if you can't catch it live, it'll be on our YouTube page. So definitely come hang out with us. So until next time, everybody, for Nate, I'm Mike. Thank you for listening.